Good morning. I'm Rob from lightoftruth.com, and I'm going to try to show you some things, some really cool things, if you can get through this. Hopefully it's harder for me than you. I'm not a camera person, I'm not a presenter, and I'm not even a speaker. I can barely write. I've tried to write about my discovery, the Sonnets Pyramid, and when I write, I get kind of excited and I get this way and that way, and I say too much and don't explain myself very well. And over 18 years of trying to present my discovery by writing, I lose people pretty quickly. And I've heard that, I got lost at so-and-so, or, why did you do this? Or, I'm just, you're way over my head. This might be the same, but so I've got nothing to lose because obviously I don't think I can write it very well. So I'm going to try to explain it. I'm going to shift to my desktop so you don't have to watch me, thank God. And I've got a few things to show you and some of my tools and whatnot. And hopefully we get through this and you learn something, but ultimately I want to show you some really cool things. If you can kind of get through the first part where I have to describe a little bit about how this works. And a little bit about how I came across it, because that might make it easier to understand. I know for me it was something that happened over maybe a year or so of several different things coming together. And then once it kind of materialized, then it just opened up a world of new stuff that hopefully other people will understand and be able to play with and find even more, because I'm just scratching the surface, and that's after 18 years. So anyway, let me go to my desktop, and I'll try to keep this as simple as possible. I'm going to be talking about this pyramid. Let me put my glasses on so I can see. Here's a graphic that I did some years back when I made a PDF of everything. And so basically it's the dollar bill pyramid, kind of broken down. I'm going to explain kind of how that works. And again, let me go back to close that. This thing right here. And basically it's a table that looks like this. And hopefully this is coming out okay on the screen. And as you see, there's numbers 1 through 26, okay? And this is kind of based on the K cipher that we all know. And I'm assuming that most people looking at this are familiar with the numbers 157, 287 being the secret Shakespearean seal numbers, and 33 being the simple cipher of Bacon. And I will show a couple of these tables as we go along. And as I stumble through, bear with me. But what you'll see here is this is the modern alphabet, 26 letters in our modern alphabet. And you recognize the K, at least through the first few letters, even with the Baconian alphabet, B is 2 in simple cipher and K cipher is 28. It's just basically adding 26 to all that. And of course, I was familiar with the Baconian alphabet with the 24 letters, which A and J, I and J were the same, and V and U were the same. But I had started to play with the 26-letter alphabet just because I'm modern. This was back in 2000, 2001. So I was already kind of playing with the same Baconian 24-letter simple and K and the 26-letter simple and K cipher. But then it was actually on September 11th of 2001 that I had kind of a realization, an epiphany or eureka moment or something. And what happened was, and I'd already been doing dates in my head, but I've got a calculator here. Let me go to it. On September 11th, I did and at the time I was doing all this in my head. I had a little pocket calculator, but I was doing it so often that I could do these numbers in my brain. And so I did September 11, seeing that it was kind of an important day. And I think I heard on the radio, on public radio, that Obama bin Laden was a Kabbalist, and this is kind of a Kabbalah type stuff. So anyway, I did September 11. I saw the simple cipher in the Bacon letter alphabet, 157, 339. Okay, cool, cool. So then I did 2001. I've got these pre-typed out here, so I don't have to type. I type about as well as I speak. And then I saw 2001 had 287. So between September 11 and 2001, I had both of the cipher numbers of 157 and 287. And by coincidence, at some time back, I also knew that 183 was 157, 365. So it was the K numbers that were kind of getting my attention. And in fact, I had already done United States, previous to this using the modern alphabet. And in the modern alphabet, United States adds up to 157 and 287. So I was already, like I said, I was already playing with the modern and the old alphabet. But, on September 11th, those new dates came up, and of course, all that happened in New York City. So I did New York City and got 157, 235. So let me go back to this table. Some of those K numbers were showing up, like for instance, New York City, 235. 235, 339 had showed up, 365 had showed up. So, I just thought, well, I'm seeing these same patterns come up wherever there's a 157. It was like, oh, duh, you just add 26, and down the way. So I went ahead and did all of the numbers up to 365, and came up with this table. And, what's cool is, here's 157 and 287. They're all A. I will even say, after working with this for so many years, that the light A, double A emblem that we see in Bacon may refer to this table of sort. The 157 is an A and 287. So that double A may actually be the seal 157, 287, for those of you familiar with the secret Shakespearean seal numbers. So anyway, I had this table, okay, cool. I played with it and it was pretty neat, but then I was also spending most of the last year in the sonnets. And let me open up this thing here. And I had also come up with a table. Now notice again, we got 14 columns. This is 1 through 14, and then 15 would be 365, which is the letter O, which is kind of curious. But basically, here's that same table down here, okay? You see, here's the 14 columns, and you got 1 through 364, and then off to the side is 365. The sonnets, I realized at some point that for every 11 sonnets, there's 154 lines, generally. I mean, there's 2 exceptions. But there's 14 lines in each sonnet, okay? And so if you have 11 sonnets in a group, that's 154 lines. And of course, you can have 14, you got 14 lines, you can have 14 groups of these 11 sonnets to get to 154. So there was a table that I was starting to kind of come to grips with, of 14 columns or 14 groups, let's say, of 11 sonnets in each group. And each group had 154 lines, which is kind of like a microcosm of the macrocosm being the whole collection of the sonnets with 154 sonnets in it. Yeah, I'm not trying to confuse you, but that's where my head was at. And when I was playing with that other table, I drew this pyramid. And it just came to me as a pyramid, for no particular reason other than I liked the way it kind of laid out. And I was also, doing Freemasonry stuff and the pyramid, on the side, And so this table with 365, kind of fit to me with this pyramid. So I had pyramid in my brain. Well, at some point, within probably a month or so, September 11th, I thought, well, what if I take these 11 sonnets and divide them into 26 days each? I don't know how I got the inspiration. I just knew I had these two tables, both with 14 columns, and let's give it a try. Okay. So how do you do that? Let me see. I think I've got it written down here. Basically, you've got 26 days and 154 lines. So what you do is, well, 26 days is 624 hours. That's 37,440 minutes. And then, times 60, then you get 2,246,400 seconds. You divide that by 154 lines. Okay, so basically, for every line, you got 14,507 seconds and little change left over. Well, that's interesting. That works out really well. So what happens is every 11 sonnets, you've got exactly 26 days. Okay, and the way it works out, this little pocket change that's left over here, every 77 lines, you have to add 1 second to kind of keep it in perfect sync. Okay, so basically for every 5.5 sonnets, you add a second, and then every 11 sonnets, you add another second. So let me see if I've got a good graphic up here. Well, here's one of my tools, okay? And I've got another graphic somewhere to show you. But here's something I made. I'm going to share these links with you. And I've got a calculator built up here. This is for the GMT time that shows where we are in the sonnets. So basically, starting from Sonnet 1, you see here's day 1, okay? Basically, it's like 4 hours and 7 minutes and a few seconds. So here's the first 3 lines. You can kind of go through and see. I wish I had I've got another graphic I'm going to pull up. But basically, this is kind of the layout of how it goes. And then every 11 sonnets starts a new tier, okay? Basically, let me see. What have I got here? I thought I had all my graphics in a row, but anyway, so looking at this, with 11 sonnets, so that's how that works. And when you do that, there's some really interesting stuff that happens, and I'll kind of show you a little bit. First of all, let's. Well, let's do this. These are day numbers, okay? So day 157, okay? Where that shows up in the sonnets is Sonnet 67. So I'm going to go Sonnet 67, jump to it, and you'll see that this begins day 157. And since it's at the beginning of a tier, the last tier ended at 11:59 p.m. So basically, day 157 starts midnight on June 6th. This being a year that's not a leap year. But regardless, it starts at 12 a.m. whatever day. But generally, this works with non-leap years. On leap years, sometimes I'll skip February 29th, or sometimes I'll just let it go in and let it fall how it may. But basically, it's a basic 365-day year. So Sonnet 67 begins with day 157. Now, what's interesting is Sonnet 66, which is the last sonnet before you get to the 7th tier in day 157, is the sonnet that has the letter T, 11 A's to start the lines, and another T. Very curious. And I do have a sonnets facsimile up here. Let me try to jump down to 67, 66. And thank you for bearing with me while I fumble my way through here. But here's the facsimile that I have of the 1609 edition of, and you see here's Sonnet 66, big T, then we got 11 A's, another T, and then an S. That's curious. It's the only sonnet in the sonnets that have any kind of a pattern or, you know, obvious arrangement to the letters. And then we have the two T's, 11 A's, and then an S, and then 67. You know, to me, what I was already working with, you know, the two T's, the twin towers, the two pillars, you know, et cetera, 33. You know, there's a lot of things that two T's can represent when studying Bacon. And then the 11 A's, of course, 11, again, you know, two ones, you know, it looks like the two pillars, and 11. So, and an A could be a pyramid. So it's like, interesting. You know, you pass beyond these two piers or pillars, and you're on this path, and then you end up in Sonnet 67, which is day 157. You know, kaboom. Now, something else, I'll come back to this. Now let's look at day number 287, because this is interesting, you know, being one of the seal numbers. After we pass through the 11th tier, or the 11th group of sonnets, you know, again, there's that 11, you know, we come into a Sonnet 122 at midnight, is day 287, another one of the seal numbers. Very interesting. But what's even more interesting is if we were to go down to the facsimile. So here's Sonnet 121, which ends the 11th tier. Oh, brother. Okay, let me get back down here. Jumping all over the place. Okay. So look at two T's. This is a typo, obviously. Sonnet 122, I'm showing you, begins with day 287. Okay. After the 11th tier, and we have two T's. So again, we've got 11, you know, for the 11 tiers, and we got two T's. Kaboom! Here we are again. You know, on day 287, the other A, the dark A. Curious, you know, coincidence? Maybe it's a coincidence. You know, I don't think so. I've been in this too long, but it is interesting to me how the day 157 and 287 are marked with two T's and an 11. And they're both, you know, they start these tiers. The sonnets also, let's go back to the first tier, okay, which ends on Sonnet 11, because again, there's 154 lines, blah, 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 blah. So Sonnet 11, okay. You see, you know, it ends day 26, because we got 26 days divided by the 154 lines. 154 lines over here. One of the things I did that I'm going to show you now is, and I had already been doing this before I started working with these tables, is I've added up the letters, the first letters of the lines of the sonnets. And using the Baconian alphabet, the 24-letter alphabet, you get 157 and 339, which, you know, it's in that same pattern. You got 157 and 339s also in that table. Let me show you. See 339 and 157. So I mean, that's just mathematically how it works. You know, 26. It's in everything's a 26. The simple K, there's always 26, a number of 26s in between them. So we have 157 as the first letters of Sonnet 11. Again, Sonnet 11 being the first group. So we've got, you know, these are sealed in different ways. You know, 157 and 287, you know, are the first days of, you know, these particular tiers that come up. Let me see, that's, so day 157 is the first day of the 7th tier, or G. Day 287 is the first sonnet of, or first day of sonnet 12 after the 11th tier or group. You know, I'm going to call it a tier because I work with a pyramid, but tables, columns, groups, whatever you want to call it. So we've got, you know, the seal here, sonnet 11, which is the top of the first tier. You know, if we're going up the pyramid, has the 157 during the first lines. I also do an 11-letter cipher for every sonnet. And what I'm doing is the 11 letters that are like the A in 66. So let me go to Sonnet 66. And again, you see the T, the 11 A's, and the T. And so if I go to Sonnet 66, that adds up to 11, okay, using the 2nd through the 12th letters. And the reason I did that, because I was doing the 11 or the 14 letter, you know, we got 14 columns of 11 sonnets. You know, there's this 14 and 11 thing bouncing around in my brain. And so for a while I was using the first 11 letters, and nothing matched anywhere, okay? And then, you know, the last 12, and then it just hit me, well, why don't I use the same 11 letters as Sonnet 66 seems to be hinting at. And of course, the simple cipher for those 11 letters, all being A, is 11, okay? So you'll see if you use this table, that's what this 11-letter cipher number is for. And then later on, I did both the 24 and the 26 letter codes, because it's kind of interesting sometimes how they both seem to kind of fit. For example, there's 2 sonnets that don't have 14 lines. You know, as people know about the sonnets, they're like, well, you know, what about the other 2 sonnets that don't have 14 lines? That could screw things up. Sonnet 126, and you see it's got 12 lines, and there's actually 2 lines in the facsimile with no words. I do count those 2 blank lines in the time. That's just, and that was by trial and error too. I've tried different ways to work that. But if you go to the letter codes in the modern alphabet, you'll see the 26-letter alphabet ciphers for those 11 letters, 157 and 287. So it's the only sonnet where adding up the letters makes a perfect seal for 157 and 287. And being 12 letters, it's almost like it's asking to be looked at, you know. So what, you know, it's like a clue. And, you know, and Sonnet 126 has other things that I probably won't talk about right now, but it's an important sonnet for sure. But it's got the seal numbers of 157, 287. Another thing that's interesting, if you take the first letter of the first 14 sonnets, let me go to my calculator here. It's these letters right here, okay? These are the first letters of the first 14 sonnets. Calculate, and then you got 183 and 287. And again, I already showed you that 183 is interesting in by itself because it's got the 157, 365. So we've got a lot of these seal numbers and 365, and these different patterns working out. But let's talk about this a minute. 183. It's the middle day of the year. Okay, you know, there's 182 days before it and 182 days after it, and 183 adds up to 157, 365. Well, look at 182. It adds up 157, 287, perfectly sealed. Interesting. The middle day of the year, 183, is 157, 365. And I've actually drawn a pyramid with, you know, it goes up from 1, it goes all the way up to the top to 3, to 183, and then comes all the way back down. 183 is the middle day of the year. It's sealed on both sides. There's 182 days before with the seal numbers and 182 days after the seal numbers. Interesting. I just find that curious. Another weird seal synchronicity. And these numbers do pop up in the sonnets and in different places. So anyway, you know, there's there's even more. You know, the last line of the 13th tier. So let me see. Where's my pyramid? Okay, here's the pyramid on the dollar bill. We've got 13 tiers. Okay, the last line of the 13th tier is line 2001. Mathematically, that's how it works out. I didn't make this up. And if we go back to my cipher calculator, which is somewhere over here, remember 2001? 183 and 287. Interesting. The last line of the 13th tier. And that's basically where it breaks off, and you know, the floating capstone and all that, you know, as far as that goes. Interesting. The 13th tier is a curious tier too. You know, we go to 13th tier, tier number 13. Tier number 13 starts on day 133. No, it starts on day 313 in Sonnet 133. 13, 13, 13. Interesting, huh? Mathematically, that's just how it works out. Sonnet 133, the 11 letters add up to 102. 102. Let's go to my calculator. It's like 182. 157, 287. Kaboom. So the 13th tier begins by being sealed. Interesting, yeah. It ends with line 2001. It's got the 287 on the end and the 183. Interesting. It's just, there's so much in here that mathematically works out that's fascinating. But, you know, and we're not even talking about the words yet. You know, I'm just talking about these numbers that just, it works so well together. You know, and while we're talking about 102, because 182, 183, you know, in the ciphers, but what about 103, which is the simple cipher of Shakespeare? As most of us know, you know, Shakespeare adds up to 103. Well, 103, you got 157, 365. Interesting. Now, you know, from what I've gathered in these years of poking around and studying this and that, and the words of the sonnets and where they fit in, you know, I believe that Shakespeare was a name given to Bacon by Dee, and it was partly because it adds up to 157 and 365, but other reasons too that I'm not going to go into here. Sonnet 126 kind of, to me, hints at it. But let me go back to the sonnets, because if this is something that Bacon was aware of, and I'm talking to you as if Bacon wrote the sonnets, which I believe, and a lot of other people believe. But if Bacon worked with these tables, these numbers, you would think that the number 33 would be a good place to start to look to see if there's a clue about Bacon, right? You know, so in the sonnets, we've got line 33, we've got sonnet 33, and we got day 33. We don't have 33 tiers. If we go to line 33, here it is, line 33, for where is she so fair whose unaired womb? Obviously talking about a virgin. The last word of line 32 is mother. Interesting. For where is she so fair unaired womb? Okay. So something about where is that mother? You know, a virgin mother? Curious. Let's go to Sonnet 33, which you would think is would be a big clue for Bacon. Bacon being 33 in cipher. Interesting, this one. Sonnet 33. The numbers 158, 192, 59, 340. There's a 111, which is, the K of Bacon. But these numbers here in the Baconian 24 letter 158, 192, 59, and 340 happen to be the same thing as, let me type it in. I don't have this one already, but Elizabeth Tudor, if I spelled it right. Look at that. The same cipher numbers, simple, reverse, short, and K, which is pretty good. That's a pretty good signature, if you want to call it a signature. For Sonnet 33, the same. Okay. Now, if I read this, I'm not going to read it to you because I'm just not skilled enough at doing that. But you can read Sonnet 33 on your own. And to me, it sounds like Elizabeth talking to Bacon. Perhaps she even wrote this. And I have come across another poem that Elizabeth wrote that the first letters, the simple cipher adds up to Elizabeth. So she seemed to be, unless that's a coincidence, which it could be, but it's possible that she was well aware of using letters to come up with a number signature. And this is Sonnet 33, which is important, as it relates to Bacon. It's Bacon's number. But, at some point, let's see. Even so, my sun one early morn did shine, her sun, which would be Bacon, and then so on and so forth. You have to read this as if it's basically full many a glorious morning have I seen flat o'er the mountaintops with a sovereign eye. She was the sovereign eye, of course, back then. So, it just sounds like Elizabeth. And the numbers match, and it fits Bacon, looking for the mother. So anyway, I'm boring you by now. We also have day 33, which is a really cool thing. So day 33, which actually begins on the previous line because it's not, a sonnet and a half, or it's not at the end of the tier. But Sonnet 33, we have the first lines of that sonnet, and I want to show you the facsimile for Sonnet 33 because that's a really cool